Welcome to another episode of Tools of Our Trade. I'm CJ and I'm one of the restoration carpenters at Thomas Jefferson's Poplar Forest in Bedford County, Virginia. Join me as we discover some of the tools and techniques that were used to build Jefferson's Forest Retreat. In this episode, we're going to talk about joints for joinery. Now, the joinery at Poplar Forest consists of the construction elements and also the finish elements inside and outside of the building. The first and the main joint we're going to talk about is the miter joint. Now, this joint we use on the exterior trim and also on some of the interior trim. This joint looks like this. It's two pieces cut at the bisection of an angle to meet together and look like they wrap around an outside corner. You can find these joints on the cornice outside of the building and around certain kinds of exterior angles inside the building. But inside, you're more likely to find a joint called the coped joint. And that's this joint right here. The coped joint is special because as I take it apart, you can see it's actually cut away to fit over the shape that it joins into. Now you might ask, well, why go through all that trouble and not just use a joint that looks like this? This is a miter joint here. And this is just that same 90-degree angle bisected like we did for the outside angle. The problem with this in practice is that when the building shifts, or even just through the construction of the building in general, that joint can open or close, and you can see that as I do that, as I shift this angle, it opens that molding up. And that's not something we want as joiners. We want our work to look like it's nice and tight, and we want it to remain that way. So we use this coped joint, and coped means that it's been cut around. So this joint has just been cut around that molding. See it there? And so even if that angle were to change just a little bit, that joint will stay nice and tight. You can see this kind of molding on most of the profiles around the inside of the house. Everything from the base, the surbase or the chair rail molding, or the crown molding, or the cornice. The third joint we're going to cover is the mortise and tenon joint. Now this is a mortise and tenon joint, and unlike the last two, this is a structural joint. Take it apart here, you can see it really consists of two parts. It consists of a square tongue that goes into a corresponding square hole. Now, when I say square, I don't mean that it's shaped like a square. I mean rather that it's square as in 90 degrees square. And that joint goes together. And this is a structural joint. And you can find this joint inside the house in many places as well. Where you'll find this joint is you'll find it in the structure of the house, in the timber framing. In this picture here, you can see in the granddaughter's room, the timber frame joints that are pegged together. Most of the interior walls are done this way. Another example of where you'll find mortise and tenon joints are in the window jambs, around the architraves of the windows. You can also see them here in this original walnut John Hemmings door. These mortise and tenon joints hold the stiles and rails of the door together. In this particular example, you can see the end of the tenon coming through but that's not always the case. There's also a very special combination of the joints we've just talked about that we use in joinery. And these joints you can find in window sash. Here's an example of a window glazing bar. As I take it apart, you'll notice that it's held together structurally with a mortise and tenon, and it's also coped. This profile is coped to fit around the intersecting ovalo on the horizontal bar. And you'll find these in windows wherever you find windows. So those are the main joints that you'll find at Poplar Forest, and those are the main joints that we use as joiners in the shop. We use the outside miter joint, the inside coped joint, the mortise and tenon joint, and the combination for window sash. Well, that's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed watching, and if you're interested in learning more, please visit our website, www.poplarforest.org, or visit us on Facebook or follow us on Instagram. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.